Hey guys, this is John. All right, I just played a 5+5 Blitz game on chess.com against this player, Boozy, 1229 in rating. And I was looking for a player in the 1200 to 1400 range, and I got one. I recorded the game, but my recording appears to be corrupted, so I wasn't able to post it. But I still wanted to give you guys my thoughts on this game because it was instructive, especially the opening. So I was black. Boozy opened with d4. I played d5. He played knight f3. I played knight f6. And then he played e3, the collie. This does lock in the bishop on c1, but often white can look forward to playing b3 and bishop b2, fianchettoing the bishop, trying to get it active in a different way. And I like to liberate my light square bishop whenever possible in d4, d5 openings. So I played bishop f5 so that when I close the door with e6, he's not locked away on c8. There's no reason to play e6, even though e6 is perfectly okay in the spirit of white's e3. I think if you have the choice, getting the bishop outside the chain is usually a good idea. So after bishop f5, my opponent played knight bd2. I played e6 as planned. He played bishop e2. And I played c5. I've often talked about the relationship between the c-pawn and the knight in d-pawn openings. And I want to get my knight up to c6 so that in conjunction with the c-pawn, I can put pressure on d4. Had I played simply knight to c6, then only one piece would be bearing down on the d-pawn, and I'd rather have two. Also, if you can encourage your opponent to take the pawn on c5, so after I play c5, if white were to take here, that's great because I can smoothly recapture with my bishop, and I'll have two center pawns to their one. So after c5, here's where things got interesting because white played knight to g5. And this is a move I see time and time again at this level. It's a classic example of a premature attack. So white is moving their knight into my half of the board in a position that doesn't really warrant it. There's nothing in the game yet to indicate that an attack with the minor pieces would work. The position is not nearly open enough for a minor piece to go charging across the board and try to assault the entirety of the black army. And it's also hard for white to follow up this knight in a meaningful way, so creating a follow-up attack, that is. And at this point, I had a brief think because I thought about just playing h6, whereupon white would have to retreat the knight to f3 or h3 because sacrificing here, for instance, is not sound. But I wanted to see what white's idea was, so I played knight to c6, just continuing with my development and double attacking d4. And at this point, Boozy continued with bishop to h5. So bishop h5, white has the bishop and the knight bearing down on f7. And I can deal with this in many ways. Bishop g6 is one way, just blocking the light square bishop and encouraging a trade. But I calculated a line here that ought to win material for black. And if you would like to calculate it yourself, feel free to do so. You can pause your video if you like. Okay, so I know I have the move list up in the upper right-hand corner, but I played a move and then white played something unexpected in reply, so maybe that didn't completely give it away. So I took on h5. This opens up an attack on the knight from my queen. And I was expecting white to take back with the queen, so queen takes h5 because that defends the knight and also threatens queen takes f7 checkmate. And the move I was going to play here was pawn to g6, hitting the queen. And the point is that the queen doesn't have too many squares it can go to that will also defend the knight. White is dealing with a double attack on the queen and the knight. You can't go to h6. That's covered by my dark square bishop. g4 is covered by my light square bishop. h4 is the only safe square, but after queen h4, I like the look of just bishop e7. This is what I was intending. Attacking the knight, which is pinned. And if white supports it with something like f4, I think I can just play h6, adding another attacker here. And that knight should be a goner. I'm not technically threatening to take it yet because my rook is undefended on h8, but I could play a move like bishop f6 next. My bishop would be holding the rook, and I can get ready to play h takes g5 in the future. And this would refute white's attack. White would very much be regretting their decision to play knight g5 and bishop h5. So I was expecting the game to go along those lines, but instead, after I played knight takes h5, white surprised me with knight takes f7. I just took. White took on h5, but now white is down a piece for only a pawn. Not enough compensation. They have exposed my king to some degree, but there aren't enough follow-up threats, very simply. And this is the trouble with launching attacks too early in like d-pawn openings and more closed openings. There are some examples in e-pawn openings, like the fried liver attack, for instance, where white gives away a knight for a pawn on f7 in order to expose the king. And the only reason that line works is that white has ample follow-up threats. Here, white just doesn't have enough ammunition. We've got only the queen trying to assault the king. With bishop g6, I am forcing that queen to move again. White played queen f3 check. I blocked with my queen. And white played queen e2. And by the way, white was moving very quick in this game, something we're accustomed to. I've seen that time and time again throughout my chess fundamentals series and also climbing the rating ladder. And even in like my 15-minute games, if you go check out the standard videos, I know many of you watch those too, but people's time management by and large online, especially in Blitz and standard categories, is pretty bad. I'm not going to say mine is perfect to any degree, but the most common thing I see people doing wrong is using far too little time. They don't like to think. And you can even see right here, white ended this game with almost a minute more than they started with. This is a 5+5 blitz game. And I mean, that should be basic, right? Like you can't expect to have decent results when you're not even using the time allotted to you. That just means you're playing superficial moves, you're just playing your first instinct. There's no depth to your thought process. So if you're one of those people who just kind of fires off the moves, that's something you can correct immediately. Make a point to use at least half your time in a game, preferably more than that even. So after queen e2, I took on d4. That pawn was undefended. It's understandable that white didn't want to trade queens on the previous move, but if that were the case, then why play queen f3 check? Because it seems pretty apparent that black is going to block with the queen, so by doing that, I was able to get queen f6 in for free, essentially. So I took that pawn on d4. White castled. I don't want to get too greedy here. I could go astray with d takes e3. That would be a big mistake after f takes e3. White's rook would be attacking my queen. I'd have to play bishop f5 to block it. I definitely do not want that. So just because I'm ahead in material, I'm not going to get cocky. So instead I played, after castles, just bishop d6. If you're being vigilant here, you'll have noticed that the pawn on c2 is in fact hanging. So I thought about playing bishop takes c2, but ultimately I came to the determination that getting my king to safety and developing my remaining pieces was more important here. I would feel better if I had my pieces out and my king tucked away on g8, let's say. Even though I can't castle normally, I can still castle by hand by playing a move like rook f8 or rook e8, and then king g8, castling mechanically. And here white played b3, which I think is another mistake. And if you'd like to figure out why this particular move is a mistake, don't look off to your right-hand side. I know you just looked off to your right-hand side. But feel free to pause your video if you really want to figure it out. So black to move. Why is b3 a mistake? Okay, so on b3, I can play d3. And because this pawn is no longer standing on b2, my queen has a nice avenue towards a1, hitting that rook. And again, it's a double attack. Probably white's best move here is queen f3, which would oppose my queen and make queen takes a1 illegal because of my king on f7. But that would entail offering a queen trade, which we already established is good for black. I'm up material. So white took. I took on a1. And here white could play bishop a3, which would attack my queen and also the bishop on d6. If that happened, I was debating even just giving up my queen on f1 and then taking on a3. And I have two rooks, a bishop, and a knight for the queen. That's a ton of material. So I might have done that. My king is still in the center, but white is just running out of stuff to attack me with. So I think that would have been fine. I might have also decided to just back the queen up, let's say all the way to f6. And even after bishop takes d6, I'm up almost a full rook. So that was also good. But instead on move 15, white played d4, probably trying to cut my queen off from retreating. I scooped up the a pawn. White played queen g4. I played queen c2, getting ready to play queen f5, trying to bring my queen back to civilization, assisting in the defense of my king if absolutely necessary. Even though I have a lot of pieces around my king, I'm still thinking safety first, consolidate the position. White played knight f3. I brought the queen back. We definitely know white doesn't want to trade. So they played queen h4. And here I decided to go rook f8. Once again, trying to bring the king back to g8. White gave a check. And it's nice for me that h7 is protected a couple times by my bishop and queen. And from here, it was a matter of just ending white's resistance, basically. With bishop e7, I put white in a pin, similar to the one I alluded to earlier in the game. And upon f4, I could play h6 to exploit the pin even further. But just to make my thought process and my task very simple here, I played bishop takes g5, knowing that if white wants to recapture the bishop, they have to agree to mass simplifications. F takes g5 would just get mated, queen takes f1. So if queen takes g5, I can trade and then get white's heavy pieces off the board. They're left with only a bishop. I'm ahead in a knight and a rook. This is an autopilot win for black. So I was looking forward to doing that. But after bishop takes g5, white dropped the queen back to g3. I retreated the bishop, and it was straightforward from here. I brought my rook to the c-file. White was trying to attack on the king side, but too little too late. They're down far too much material. I got my rook in. And here I was able to do a nifty deflection move too, bishop h4. And if white were to take the bishop, I could play queen g2 checkmate. So white played queen f3, and I was able to trade. And very soon won the game. Checkmate on h1. So the purpose of this series is not to boost my ego and demonstrate how I can crush lower rated players mercilessly and how I'm such a great chess player or whatever. No, this is an instructive series. I want to show you guys the typical mistakes that you are making if you're at this rating level and your opponents are also making. And in my mind, this is a game that perfectly illustrates how a lot of players launch premature attacks. White's playing knight g5 in a position where darting across the board is just not justified, and they lost the game because of that. After knight c6, they tried to follow up with bishop h5. This is equivalent to a couple of lone soldiers charging across a battlefield that is very well entrenched by both sides. Notice there haven't even been any pawn exchanges. If you think of the pawns as basically the trenches and the pieces supporting roles behind, I mean, how many examples throughout warfare in world history do you know of lone charges across a well-entrenched battlefield that actually work out? You know, chess is a war game. You can make that comparison. And now it's just up to black to punish white for that, which I was able to do by taking on h5, and I had that follow-up queen takes h5, g6. So, yeah, Boozy just got optimistic here. Maybe they've done stuff like this before and it's worked, but I can tell you that this is a bad habit. If you launch premature attacks with your minor pieces, you want to get out of that habit ASAP. And also the time management. You guys just got to use your time. I think those of you who watch my videos probably use your time better than the average person at your rating. But if you're consistently finishing your games with more than half your time, half the allotted time at the start of the game available, then you got to correct that. So I will continue on my rating ladder climb. I'm playing under my own rating because I think it's a little dishonest to misrepresent my strength and play under an account that's similar in rating to these guys. I do understand the argument. Some people have commented on these recent videos that I've made and said that people may feel intimidated in playing against me, and therefore they may play worse than usual. I don't know if I buy that because I often see people playing up to the opponent's level or being inspired by playing against a higher rated player and wanting to play even better than usual. So I think it works both ways. And I'll continue playing under my rating because I think it's a nice way to get in games without having to misrepresent my strength and play under a lower account or whatnot. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this game, and I'll be back again soon with more Climbing the Rating Ladder videos. All right, guys, have a good weekend. Bye.